He was just another troubled teen in a quiet town in Nottingham, England. But beneath his crooked smile and charming exterior lurked a darkness that no one could have predicted. By the age of 21, he had already terrorized classmates, manipulated neighbors, and left a trail of small crimes that hinted at something far more sinister to come. What begins as bullying in the hallways of a high school soon escalates into a chilling story of obsession, violence, and murder that would shake an entire community and ultimately a nation. How could someone so seemingly ordinary transform into a monster capable of shocking brutality? This story will take you inside the mind, the manipulations, and the horrifying acts of a young man whose name would be whispered in fear for decades to come. Disclaimer: content is for awareness and educational purposes only. Viewer discretion advised. Nottingham, 2003. The town was still adjusting to the turn of the century, and few could imagine that behind the facades of everyday life, a future killer was honing his skills in secrecy. Daniel Moore's first brushes with law enforcement were dismissed as juvenile pranks, but each act was a building block in the construction of a monster. His victims started small: classmates pushed too far, pets harmed in secret, and neighbors intimidated by anonymous threats. Yet with each incident, his confidence grew, and so did his audacity. By the time he was out of his teens, Daniel had transformed from a local bully into a calculating predator, capable of manipulating everyone around him. Friends, family, and even the local authorities were unaware of the true scale of his violence. It wasn't until the first major murder, a seemingly random attack on a young woman leaving a nightclub, that the reality of his capabilities became undeniable. Investigators noted a chilling pattern. The crimes escalated in cruelty and sophistication, leaving communities terrified and police baffled. With each act, he learned to cover his tracks, exploiting blind spots in law enforcement and leaving those who suspected him frustrated and desperate for answers. But Daniel's story is not only about the crimes, it's about the human cost. Families torn apart, friends haunted by guilt for not seeing the signs, and neighbors living in constant fear. The ripple effect of one individual's darkness is devastating. Psychological experts later revealed that Daniel exhibited traits of extreme manipulation, psychopathy, and a profound inability to empathize, traits that allowed him to charm, deceive, and terrorize without remorse. As police closed in, Daniel continued his spree, testing the limits of the law and the patience of investigators. His cunning and brutality made him one of the most notorious figures in British criminal history, a case studied in criminal justice courses and true crime documentaries worldwide. Could such a transformation have been prevented? Were the warning signs visible enough for intervention? Or was this the inevitable rise of a calculated predator? If this story has gripped you so far, comment "Monster Revealed." Share it with anyone who needs to understand the consequences of unchecked darkness. Subscribe to Crime Chronicles TVC and turn on the notification bell for more chilling and educational true crime stories. This is just the beginning. The full story of Daniel Moore's descent and the horrifying consequences for everyone in his path is far from over. By 2005, Daniel Moore's carefully constructed facade of normalcy was unraveling, but the world still underestimated him. His early acts of bullying and intimidation had evolved into something far more sinister: planned assaults, psychological manipulation, and a growing confidence that he was untouchable. The once small-town bully was now a predator who had learned to exploit weaknesses in those around him. Friends, neighbors, even law enforcement officers who dismissed early warning signs as overreactions. Every minor crime, every whispered threat, every unnoticed act of cruelty had become a rehearsal for far darker deeds. His methods were chillingly methodical. Victims described a man whose charm could disarm anyone, only to reveal a calculating cruelty once trust was gained. In Nottingham, whispers of missing persons began to circulate, but Daniel's careful planning left no evidence, only confusion and fear. It was this meticulous precision, paired with an uncanny ability to blend into ordinary life, that made him so dangerous. Schools, workplaces, and social circles became hunting grounds for someone who thrived on control, fear, and manipulation. By 2006, his crimes had escalated to premeditated attacks. A pattern emerged. He would target vulnerable individuals, gain their trust, and slowly isolate them from those who could protect them. Police files reveal a string of disappearances linked by small but significant connections, shared acquaintances, similar times of day, and the use of subtle psychological tactics to intimidate or disorient. The community, once confident in its safety, now lived in fear, unsure of who might be next. Families of victims began to speak out, sharing stories of unimaginable loss and confusion. Mothers recalled the chilling phone calls. Friends remembered the subtle, almost imperceptible threats. Neighbors described the eerie calm before incidents unfolded. Each narrative painted a picture of a man who was always one step ahead, a manipulator capable of bending perception, reality, and authority to his will. The turning point came when a courageous neighbor, suspicious of Daniel's late-night movements and unusual behavior, documented evidence that connected him to multiple crimes. But even then, his cunning allowed him to evade capture, leveraging legal loopholes and sowing doubt among investigators. Detectives admitted that Moore's intelligence and strategic mind were unlike anything they had encountered, turning a local criminal case into a full-blown investigation that would draw national attention. And yet, behind the headlines and police reports, there were human stories, tears shed in silence, friendships broken, and lives forever altered. Each victim carried not only the physical trauma, but a lingering psychological shadow, a reminder of the depths of deception and evil one person could wield. What drives someone like Daniel Moore to escalate so rapidly from bully to predator? Was it a thirst for power, a compulsion rooted in childhood trauma, or something far more calculated? Could these crimes have been prevented if the early signs were taken seriously? If this story has gripped you, comment "Darkness Exposed." Share it with anyone who must understand the consequences of manipulation and unchecked aggression. Subscribe to Crime Chronicles TVC and turn on the notification bell to follow the unraveling of one of Britain's most disturbing criminal cases. The shadow of Daniel Moore looms larger with every revelation, and the true horror of his actions and their ripple effects has only begun to emerge. By 2008, Daniel Moore's carefully hidden life began to unravel. Despite years of eluding justice, his confidence had created cracks in the armor, a series of small mistakes that law enforcement had been waiting for. Surveillance footage, witness testimonies, and digital traces began to coalesce, revealing a man whose charm masked a sinister intellect. The very traits that allowed him to manipulate and deceive, his eloquence, his ability to read people, his patience, also made him a formidable target once authorities understood his patterns. Moore's capture was not cinematic or violent. It was the result of meticulous police work, forensic diligence, and the courage of those who refused to be silenced. Detectives described months of piecing together seemingly unrelated incidents, missing persons reports, anonymous tips, and the testimonies of those who had survived his manipulations. It was a painstaking process, like untangling a web spun over years, each thread representing fear, trauma, and shattered trust. The victims' stories brought the chilling reality of Moore's crimes into focus. Jessica Grant, a 17-year-old from Leicester, recalled how he befriended her online, appearing as a mentor and confidant, only to isolate her from friends and family. The psychological torment she endured, coupled with subtle threats, left her questioning her own reality. Similarly, Thomas Keane, a 23-year-old apprentice in Nottingham, described how Moore leveraged his workplace to assert dominance, manipulating coworkers and instilling fear that left Thomas socially paralyzed for months. But the narrative was not solely one of manipulation. It was one of systemic blind spots. Friends of Moore recalled his ability to charm authority figures, disarm critics, and obscure his intentions with a polished veneer. Even local law enforcement, who later pieced together his crimes, admitted that his intelligence and strategic thinking made him almost untouchable. He was a master of perception management, creating a persona that was impossible to question, which allowed him to operate under the radar while causing unimaginable harm. Moore's eventual arrest shocked the community. News outlets reported a man who seemed ordinary in appearance, yet whose actions had terrorized a region for nearly a decade. Victims spoke publicly for the first time, sharing harrowing accounts of fear, betrayal, and survival. One mother, whose son had narrowly escaped Moore's influence, recounted sleepless nights and the relentless anxiety of wondering if her child would ever be safe again. These testimonies illuminated the human cost of his crimes, transforming abstract statistics into real, emotional stories of suffering and resilience. Even after his capture, questions remained. How many more had fallen under his influence without anyone noticing? Could earlier intervention have prevented years of psychological and emotional trauma? The case of Daniel Moore became a haunting lesson in vigilance, trust, and the limits of perception. If this story has gripped you so far, comment "Justice Revealed." Share it with anyone who needs to understand the devastating consequences of manipulation and unchecked malevolence. Subscribe to Crime Chronicles TVC and turn on the notification bell to witness the final revelations of Moore's dark legacy. As investigators delve deeper into his past, the true scale of Moore's manipulation and the stories of his victims painted a portrait of cruelty, cunning, and a chilling capacity for deception. The arrest of Daniel Moore marked not just the end of his reign of manipulation, but the beginning of a painful reckoning for those he had ensnared. Court proceedings were lengthy, emotionally charged, and a public spectacle, shedding light on the sheer breadth of his crimes. Prosecutors meticulously presented evidence collected over years: bank records, emails, witness statements, and surveillance footage, each piece painting a clearer picture of a man whose charm was a carefully constructed weapon. The courtroom was filled with tension as victims confronted him, their voices trembling yet resolute, demanding justice for years of fear and violation. The trial revealed the full extent of Moore's network of deceit. He had not only manipulated individuals, but had created an environment where intimidation silenced those around him. Colleagues, acquaintances, and even local authorities were drawn into his web of influence, often unknowingly aiding the psychological hold he maintained. Each testimony was a chilling reminder of how his intelligence and manipulation created layers of deception, making it difficult for anyone to see the truth until it was nearly too late. Sentencing was severe, reflecting both the gravity of his offenses and the necessity of justice for the victims. Moore received multiple consecutive sentences, ensuring that his capacity to harm would be permanently curtailed. Yet, the legal victory, while essential, could not erase the emotional and psychological scars left on those affected. Survivors faced the long, arduous journey of rebuilding their lives, learning to trust again, and finding solace in a community of support that had grown stronger in the wake of the trauma. The enduring impact on the victims was profound. Jessica Grant, once isolated and terrified, began advocating for online safety and awareness, sharing her story to help prevent others from falling prey to similar predators. Thomas Keane found solace in therapy and peer support groups, gradually reclaiming the confidence and independence Moore had sought to destroy. Families, though scarred by the experience, rallied together, determined to transform their suffering into resilience and vigilance. Each story of survival highlighted a powerful truth. Even in the face of profound betrayal, the human spirit can endure, rebuild, and thrive. Moore's capture also prompted systemic reflection. Authorities implemented new protocols for monitoring manipulative patterns and online behaviors, emphasizing preventive action to protect vulnerable individuals. Educational programs and community awareness campaigns emerged, inspired by the lessons learned from Moore's calculated manipulations. His case became a cautionary tale, a chilling reminder that evil often hides behind a smile, and that vigilance, awareness, and courage are essential tools in confronting deception. As the courtroom emptied and headlines faded, the lives of those he had harmed continued their slow recovery. The story of Daniel Moore, from bully to manipulator to convicted criminal, remained etched in memory, a stark example of both human cruelty and resilience. If this story has touched you, comment "Never again." Share it with anyone who needs to understand the devastating consequences of manipulation. Subscribe to Crime Chronicles TVC and turn on the notification bell to follow more real-life crime chronicles. Even in darkness, the survivor's courage shines, serving as a testament to the power of truth, justice, and the unwavering human spirit. Even after the courtroom drama concluded and Daniel Moore was sentenced, the ripple effects of his actions continued to resonate. Part 5 of this story focuses not on the criminal himself, but on the enduring lessons, the systemic changes inspired by his capture, and the personal victories of those he had sought to control. This segment underscores how even the darkest experiences can catalyze growth, awareness, and transformation. Communities affected by Moore's manipulations began to heal, but healing was neither linear nor simple. Victims shared their stories publicly, using their voices as shields and tools for education. For example, Sarah Thompson, who had fallen victim to Moore's psychological games during her early career, launched an awareness campaign at her university, addressing the subtle signs of coercion and control that can escalate into criminal abuse. Meanwhile, Marcus Allen, whose family had been indirectly impacted, became a community advocate, focusing on mental health resources for those who had endured manipulation and intimidation. These initiatives demonstrated the human capacity to reclaim agency even after profound violation. The justice system, too, evolved in response to Moore's case. Prosecutors and law enforcement agencies studied his methods to better understand how manipulative individuals exploit both personal and institutional weaknesses. Policies were revised to include stronger safeguards against fraud, coercion, and intimidation, particularly in online and corporate spaces. Educational workshops and digital literacy programs were developed to help potential victims recognize and resist psychological manipulation before it escalates. Moore's actions became a catalyst for preventive measures, illustrating the importance of vigilance and systemic accountability. On a personal level, survivors faced long journeys of recovery. Therapy, support groups, and peer networks provided structured ways to rebuild trust and self-esteem. Some returned to careers or communities they had previously abandoned in fear, while others dedicated themselves to advocacy and mentorship, ensuring that the lessons they had learned would serve as warnings to others. The narrative of survival intertwined with the narrative of justice, reinforcing the idea that resilience is both personal and communal. Moore's downfall and the resulting awareness campaigns highlighted the broader societal responsibility to protect the vulnerable and confront abuse wherever it appears. The story served as a powerful reminder. While manipulation and deception can leave lasting scars, the human capacity for courage, solidarity, and recovery is equally enduring. Survivors, through their actions and advocacy, reclaimed the narrative, proving that even in the face of calculated cruelty, hope and empowerment can prevail. The story of Daniel Moore, from his early manipulations to the final legal reckoning and the ongoing resilience of survivors, leaves an indelible mark, a testament to human strength, the pursuit of justice, and the critical importance of awareness and prevention. If this episode has moved you, comment "Strength Prevails," share with those who need to hear it, subscribe to Crime Chronicles TVC, and turn on the notification bell for more gripping, real-life crime stories.